Morgen. Guten Morgen, bonjour, bon dia. Good morning, y'all. Buenos dias and welcome. And welcome to the 2025 FOXP1 Community Conference. Yes, okay. So I am delighted to be here as a parent, and I'm honored to have been asked to give some opening remarks as co-president of the International FOXP1 Foundation, along with Cheryl Rick, also co-president. And we are among a group of parent volunteers. Am I close enough? Okay. It's as close as possible to be found, please. All right. Word up. Okay. Okay. I was hearing echoes and feedback. Sorry. Okay. So Cheryl and I, Adam, former co-president, and a group of other parents co-founded the foundation. And I'm here representing the foundation, but also the community as an opening speaker here to welcome you to the conference. And before I get started, I just want to thank Esther and Annemiek and Sylvia, and a large number of other folks that participated in organizing this conference. It's really your attention to detail and your performance here has set the new bar for these conferences. And it's really amazing. So this is wonderful. Okay, so as many of you know, FOXP1 syndrome hasn't been recognized as a clinical syndrome for that long. The first paper, I think, came out about 15 years ago, summarizing the syndrome. And my own son, Jonah, was diagnosed in 2013. And it wasn't for another year or two that we first met any other individuals or families with FOXP1 syndrome. So it was a time of pretty significant isolation and loneliness. And I think many of you have maybe felt the same thing before and after you got your diagnosis for your family member. And so it was very important to me and my wife, Annie, from the very beginning to connect with other parents and build community and to have actual face-to-face connections with other parents. And so that's what we were able to achieve in the decades since he was diagnosed. And here are just some pictures of some sessions that we had. Up here in 2015 is the first, to my knowledge, the first known meeting of two individuals with FOXP1 syndrome. That's my son, Jonah, there, and his friend, Siem. We met Siem and his family. They're from the Netherlands. Back in 2015, so 10 years ago. And I'm delighted to actually be able to catch up with them now because they're back here at this conference 10 years later. And CM is fully twice or three times the height that he was in 2015. But it's amazing to see the kids grow and develop. And so these meetings are very important as reunions too. And so we were able to reunite as a group in 2019. There was actually a meeting, I think in 2018 or 2019, among the French contingent, which was an inspiration for a larger meeting that we organized in 2019 in New York with the help of folks at the Seaver Center who've done a lot of research on FOXP1 syndrome. And so that was 2019. That was about 70 people together, representing maybe 15 individuals with FOXP1 syndrome. And then as soon as we could after the pandemic, we got together again in person in New York, again, in 2023, and that meeting was about double the size of the one in 2019. And a lot of you here were at that meeting, and it's wonderful to see you again also. And so these meetings have been very important. They've grown in size as the community has grown. And also in 2019, we got enough of a critical mass to put together the foundation. So we met, a lot of us parents who ended up creating the foundation met in 2019 and shortly thereafter, inspired by what we experienced in 2019 to put together the International FOXP1 Foundation. And so I want to talk a little bit today about the foundation and about the community that we all are part of and how the two kind of co-support each other. So the foundation was created at the end of 2020, as I mentioned, and we have grown in size and ambition as the community has grown. But from the very beginning, we were focused on two main pillars, we call them, that kind of represent the things that Annie and I and many of you have experienced. We wanted to build the community so that we could help end the loneliness and the isolation. It was very important for us to be able to connect, and I think that's something that's true for a lot of us. I'm a scientist by training, and so pushing the frontiers of knowledge about FOXP1 and FOXP1 syndrome is very important to me also, and everyone else that helped create the foundation. So since the beginning, since 2020, that's what we've been focused on: community building and research. And just as some examples, it's not just supporting the organization and funding for meetings like this, which is very important, but also lots of smaller things along the way, because we only are able to meet every other year approximately in person. But we have monthly Zoom chats. We have a sibling support group that's been spun up. We have a grandparent support group. We have newsletters. We have webinars that I hope some of you have been able to see to help educate and bring the community together. And there are also regional meetings. I mentioned the one in France, but there are other ones that are cropping up too that we help support. On the research side, we have been hell-bent, especially in the past couple of years, with the advent of Shamit Dasgupta, who will be speaking later today on the research side, to pursue what we call clinical trial readiness. And this is sort of a whole suite of activities that are designed to help us understand what to measure, how to measure, and what matters to families when it comes to running a clinical trial. And I just want to drill a little bit into this because there are 2 or 3 separate sub-projects that we're focused on that we're either promoting and supporting or directly financially supporting. So there's RareX and Citizen that I think many of you have heard of, and these are collectively efforts that are designed to help us chart the natural development of the disorder over time, the natural history. And this is very important for setting the baseline for how the syndrome looks at different ages and how it progresses so that you can have something to compare against if you have a therapy, whether it's a speech therapy or a drug or a gene therapy, to see if it's making any impact on the individual's performance or life or experience. So that's this here, and I strongly encourage you all, and I'll get back to this at the end of my short comments here, how to get involved in these programs. It's very important that we all participate and contribute because the more we understand about FOXP1 syndrome, the better the research can be, and hopefully the sooner we can come to something that can make a really significant impact on our children's ability to thrive in the world. We're also directly funding projects to support those research efforts to understand what to measure and how to measure in the future clinical trial, as well as developing certain research tools like specialized cell lines or engineered mice that will help us with some of the basic research that's needed to test something before you go into a human. So that's all tied together in this clinical trial readiness. I think there was one other thing I was going to say here, but I forget. I'm sorry, it may come back to my mind in a minute. But back to community. So this is a map that represents a census that was conducted this year. And this is from May. And as of May, I believe it, to be precise, we have identified 652 individuals around the world. And so this is a very impressively global spread. And just taking a step back to when my son was diagnosed, that's 100-fold more people known to exist than when he was diagnosed. And so it's a lot easier to connect with other folks in your community, in your country, or your neighbor. And that's a really wonderful thing. But you may notice there's broad areas of the map here where there just aren't dots. And so these are areas where we think that there are, plenty of other people that have not yet been diagnosed. It's very unlikely that there's no one in sub-Saharan Africa. And although this map doesn't really clearly show it, there are tiny numbers that indicate there's only a handful of people in China and Russia and no one in Japan. That's very unlikely given the populations of those countries. It's more likely in some cases lack of access to resources for testing and genetic diagnosis. And in other cases, maybe it's geopolitical or language barriers. So there's definitely more community building that we can be doing to weave together these separate groups to build a more truly global foundation. Okay, thank you. So, okay, back to the foundation. So based on this map and my comments, well, the community has grown tremendously. And we can tell by the strict numbers that FOXP1 syndrome is no longer ultra, ultra rare. Yes, it's rare. It's not like high blood pressure as a disease, but it's also not one of these N of 1 conditions. We have a very large community now globally, and that's wonderful. The foundation has also grown a lot. It's no longer fledgling. We have a lot of active programs supporting community and supporting research, as I mentioned, doing a lot of good for the community. However, we are at something of an inflection point because we're all parents of children with FOXP1 syndrome. So we're all volunteering. Many of us have day jobs. And then we have the foundation. And so there's only so much that we can achieve as a group. But all these people here and all the folks online and everyone around the world, there are many of us, and we could be achieving a tremendous amount with increased involvement and support. So part of the reason I'm here is to spur interest in joining the foundation and actually joining some of the programs. And I just want to remind you all that although there are over 1,800 members of the Facebook group, which is fantastic, and it's a wonderful venue for sharing, activity on Facebook isn't quite the same thing as membership in the foundation and participation in the community activities that we have. There's sort of a separate step, and we ask that you, for instance, follow that QR code and join the foundation, sign up for some of our groups, receive the newsletters, tune into the webinars, and volunteer for activities. Because the more that you contribute, it will come directly back to you. The return on investment is 100% or 200%. And everything that we're doing, and now I remembered what I was going to say in the previous slide, these dual focuses on community and research, our ultimate goal is to provide a sense of hope, a hope for connection, a hope for a friendly conversation, someone with some more experience than you to guide you a little bit along the way on this tough path that we're all treading. Hope for a new therapy, whether it's a speech therapy or a gene therapy, but ultimately hope to help our families thrive and help our family members with FOXP1 syndrome thrive. So that's what we're really focused on. And we can get there much more quickly and effectively with increased involvement from the community. So I'll leave this up for just a moment with additional QR codes, but these really boil down to time, talent, and treasure. And this is the best way to help support the community. On the time side, follow this QR link to a summary page of all the research projects that we're supporting directly or sponsoring, and just by driving traffic to those other projects. These are the research programs that we have decided make the most sense to push forward understanding of FOXP1 syndrome. So there's that. That's your time. On the talent side, volunteer. I mentioned there are lots of ideas that we have that we are kind of bandwidth constrained and haven't been able to dig into for lack of, basically person power. So if you want to help us move some of those other programs along, follow the link and sign up as a volunteer. And there may be many other things that we haven't even thought of that need to get done or could be done. And maybe you could lead the charge on one of those other projects and add that to the roster of things that we're working towards. That's your time and talent. So volunteer. Okay. And then the last piece I'll call out the donation piece. Money is very helpful for pushing things forward. And so on the treasure piece, if you can't contribute time and you don't have the energy, I certainly understand, especially parents of younger kids, there aren't enough hours in the day for that piece. But maybe you could kick in a little bit to help support the research on the financial side. So there's the treasure piece. And then there are some other links here for other ways to connect with the community. The ambassadors page is a great place to go to connect with a person in your country who speaks your language and understands the local laws and support systems in your country. I think we have 20 or so ambassadors of a broad range of nationalities and geographic scope. And so that's a wonderful resource too. And then there are some other links at the bottom. And my last comment is, please come find me or other members of the board if you have questions about our operations. I'd like to ask all the members of the board of directors of the foundation to just raise your hand so people can recognize you. So, oh yes, and then I have a whole set. Ambassadors, please raise your hand. I'm not an ambassador. So these are folks that I mentioned represent different countries and languages. And then I think maybe everyone already knows Annemiek and Esther, but you can raise your hands as well. And then the last point I'd like to mention is that we are very fortunate to have concluded a very successful recruiting effort to hire our first employee for the foundation. Brandy Underwood has joined us as executive director. I'd like her to raise her hand so folks can see her. And I hope this is not news. We've been trying to promote and announce her arrival, but she's going to help us as a seasoned professional in the nonprofit rare disease space. She comes to the table with a lot of prior experience to help us level up our operations. And so this is one of the other aspects of our inflection point as a group. We've got Brandy on board. We've got a tremendously large community. And we have a massive amount of potential that we could accomplish together. So I'll stop there and thank you very much. I'm going to hand it off now to Cheryl Fife Marisich for the first session of the conference.